Joe Biden starts to talk about possibly holding us into Afghanistan even longer in a Sunday speech in which NBC cuts away before we can see any questions. So we'll talk just a bit about what's going on with that. Those plastic shields that were supposed to protect everyone from coronavirus may have made everything worse. So we'll go a little bit over that and some other COVID stuff here. Donald Trump has a rally in Alabama that draws a massive crowd, but he gets booed when he tries to push the vaccine on people once again. So we will go over that. And Hurricane Henry, we will go in and check in with our neighbors to the northeast, including one regular viewer of this program. It's going to be all this and more. Hey, do you trust the plan yet? Oh, by the way, it appears that there was no plan on January 6th either. Hey, do you trust the plan yet? I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. We are at 43 tabs today. 43 tabs across the news because of, well, I'm going to be completely fair with you. Some of this is because we had 13 tabs left over from the end of Friday. And I cut some stuff for relevance too. We wound up having 6 that are carried over from Friday at this point. Because all we've done this week, and I looked over the Red Ned notes for this week here because my boy John is going to come over and help me on the Red Ned show. And I looked over the Red Ned notes last night and dear God, there's a lot of Afghanistan there. There is a ton of Afghanistan there. There's so much. It's ridiculous how much we talked about Afghanistan last week. I mean, it's not completely ridiculous, but it is a bit ridiculous how much we talked about Afghanistan last week. So, and we're going to start the day talking about that. We don't have as much Afghanistan stuff today, but still, we got to start the day talking about it because, I mean, even Twitter has turned on Joe Biden at this point. Joe Biden is a disgrace. Was trending last night. Has been trending for 3 days straight. But hey, no more mean tweets, right? Hey, am I right? We don't have to worry about the mean tweets. What the mean old orange man was going to say on Twitter anymore. And that's the most important part. That is the most important part. No more mean tweets. So, anyway, let's get through all this here. Let's talk about what's going on in the news. But before we get started, head on over and check out my friends. Coming up in an upcoming project that will be released soon. As soon as we have the domain secured, we're going to be releasing the name of that project coming up here. But still, go over and check out my friends. The Porch Boys, The Daily Ignoramus, The Breakdown with Birkenhoff, The R-Rated Conservative, and The Freckles and Brit Show. Head on over there, check out all of those great shows, great creators, and once we get all on board, looks like we've got a couple writers ready to go too at the beginning, so I'm fairly excited to see where this goes, but still need to go and talk to the web lady. But we will figure all that out and go over the check out all those great creators. And once we have a release, a name coming up here, we will get that out there. I will start convincing all the great creators to talk about the website and what they look forward to it for the most here. And you can help us support great creators. Let's look in at your finance. And meanwhile, we're going to get some of the live chat up here and see what you guys are doing. Make sure you guys aren't killing each other in the live chat here. So starting in off of the Dow is sitting at 35,120.08. That is up 225.96 points, or almost a little over 0.5% off Friday, which actually surprises me a little bit. It does look like the Jack Hole meeting is going to be, and I know it's not the Jack Hole meeting, but the Jackson Hole meeting is going to be what's holding this up. I'm actually, with the confidence in the current president, very, very surprised we're seeing the Dow look the way that it does. That's actually shocking to me right now, but I mean, regardless, we got to watch where it goes and see what's going to affect it and what's going to take it down. So we will continue to watch that. Looking in at your Bitcoin is sitting at $50,263 US dollars and 60 US cents. I'm actually going to refresh that. Yeah, actually went up overnight because I haven't refreshed it since last night. Correction, $50,394 US dollars and 70 US cents. We are edging close to that $63,000 high. And I'm kind of excited to see it because, you know, what did we say? What was the world saying not that long ago? Bitcoin is dead. Get out of your cryptocurrencies. Get away from that. And as I mentioned, as you start to have more and more places to spend your Bitcoin, it's going to be a more viable asset. Now, also with the government coming in and we're going to regulate cryptocurrency because we need to regulate everything. As we see some of that, it's going to be a little bit, some of your normies are going to get into it, but some of your other people are going to start looking for the next cryptocurrency, the next thing we can do out there to bypass the federal government. But yes, as of right now, we are looking at a 50,000 US dollar Bitcoin. So as long as it's decentralized, it's worth a look. Looking in at your metal prices here, looks like copper is actually up a little bit here, at least your wiring. Bare Bright copper wiring is up to $3.44 a pound. Thin wire $203. Romex $169. Your tubing and your pure coppers are staying about the same. Steel and complete cars seem to be going down. So most of your steel is down, plus a little bit of aluminum. Aluminum siding and copper fin aluminum radiators are out, but cans are up. Now would be a great time to go get your cans. Cats are down, so we will see where that goes and what happens here with the metal prices as we move along. Reading from IBD. Dow Jones futures rise. Does market rally pass your ultimate test? Apple, Facebook, Nvidia near buy point. This is from Ed Carson. Dow Jones futures rose modestly Monday morning, along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures, with crude oil and copper prices rebounding. The stock market rally lost ground last week, but found support at key levels. However, for investors, there is an ultimate test. Are you making money in the current stock market rally? Apple, Facebook, Nvidia, DocuSign, and Snap are all near buy points. Apple, Nvidia, and Snap stock are on the IBD leaderboard. Nvidia stock is on Swing Trader. Nvidia and Snap are on the IBD 50. There's the advertisement. Let's look at the gig economy law for just a sec. We will be looking at that later on in the program, but let's just see what IBD has to say about that. A state judge ruled that Prop 22, which voters approved in November of 2020, violates California's constitution. Prop 22 classifies app-based delivery and ride-hailing drivers as independent contractors with certain limited benefits. Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, and others spent more than $200 million on the ballot initiative, which passed with 58% support. The ruling won't have any immediate effect on Uber and others, with appeals certain to come, but Uber stock, Lyft, and DoorDash fell solidly on Monday's pre-market. I'm a little confused by this, so I'm actually looking forward to getting over to reading this article, because I thought that Prop 22 was a boon on your app-based drivers because, I mean, yes, of course, they're independent contractors, but my thought to that was the Prop 22 was trying to force them to be employees. So I'm interested to look in this and see where it's actually, where I was wrong, and see what this means going forward for them, because I thought that this would be a great thing for them. But we will see. On the futures, Dow futures climbed 0.45% versus fair value. S&P 500 futures advanced 0.3%, and NASDAQ 100 futures rose 0.3%. Crude oil futures rallied 3% after falling for several straight sessions. Copper prices gained 2%, but the 10-year Treasury yield also rose slightly. Bitcoin moved back above 50K. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So that's what we have going on early today from IBD. Let's check in with CNBC and see what happened over the weekend. Dow futures rise more than 100 points ahead of key Fed event this week. It's a Fed, it must be bad. Make sure that Ron is over here too, because it looks like Trovo is not pushing in here. Yep, Ron is here with his fire jokes. Yeah, we'll talk a bit about the jab later on too. Alright, let's see what they have to say here from Yoon Lee. Stock futures were higher in early trading on Monday following a volatile week on Wall Street as investors eye a key event where a Federal Reserve could hint at prospects for tapering stimulus. Futures tied to the Dow Jones Industrial Average jumped around 160 points. S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ 100 futures were both also in positive territory. Major averages are coming off a losing week as investors grew worried that the Fed's potential to pull back monetary stimulus could slow down the economic recovery that is already challenged by the spread of the Delta COVID-19 variant. Traders are eagerly awaiting the Jackson Hole Symposium for clues on the Fed's timeline for dialing back the $120 billion a month bond buying program. The event takes place virtually on Thursday and Friday. The Fed previously was going to conduct the event in a mixed virtual and live presentation, but decided Friday to go all virtual in the light of the rising virus risk. That nobody talks about that either, by the way. Jerome Powell's speech will be titled The Economic Outlook, which may suggest the speech could have a more near-term focus, Nomura economist Aichi Amamiya said in a note. Given the recent deterioration of incoming data and the pandemic situation, we see some risk Powell could focus on increased uncertainty due to the latest COVID-19 surge. Amamiya added, at a minimum, we view recent comments from Fed officials as supporting our view of a December tapering announcement despite a preference for the FOMC for November as the July meeting. The blue chip Dow fell 1.1% last week, while the S&P 500 declined nearly 0.6% during a two-week winning streak. The tech-heavy Nasdaq dipped 0.7% during the week. We suspect our investor conviction is being challenged by the potential for upcoming monetary policy changes, shifting growth versus value rotations, and a rising trajectory of new coronavirus cases, Craig Johnson, technical market strategist at Piper Sandler, said in a note. So, the investors think that the Jack Hole Symposium is going to make them rich. So they went in and bought a bunch of stuff in a bunch of different stocks, and we're going to see what happens on all the markets here. But really, honestly, I still see somewhere through the rest of the week the Afghanistan thing starting to weigh on what's happening with the stocks. I really do see that coming. But we'll see. I could be wrong, and I will admit if I am. I will admit that I'm very surprised to see the chart that we saw here. But with that, we're going to get into the news, and let's see what is happening with Kabul. Starting with ABC 7 Eyewitness News out of Chicago. President Biden says 11,000 flown from Kabul over the weekend during a Sunday speech. This comes to ABC 7 by the Associated Press, with Robert Burns, AP National Security writer, contributing. President Joe Biden said Sunday that the U.S.-led evacuation of Americans, at-risk Afghans, and others from Kabul airport picked up speed this weekend, although it remains vulnerable to threats posed by the Islamic State extremist group. Speaking at the White House, Biden said 11,000 people have been airlifted from Kabul in a 36-hour period this weekend, but he did not provide details. The number appeared to include flights by charter and non-U.S. military aircraft, as well as U.S. Air Force C-17 and C-130 transport planes that have been flying daily from the capital. Tens of thousands of people remain to join the airlift, which has been slowed by security issues and U.S. bureaucracy hurdles. Earlier Sunday, administration officials said the U.S. military is considering creative ways to get Americans and others into Kabul airport for evacuation from Afghanistan amid acute security threats from the Pentagon. On Sunday, it ordered 6 U.S. commercial airlines to help move evacuees from temporary sites outside Afghanistan. Are we really that behind on Trovo? Good God. As of right now, and I've already finished the finance, they just caught up to where I had the title card up. That's how far behind Trovo is right now. Let's switch back to the Twitch over here, see what we're doing. Earlier Sunday, admin officials said the U.S. military is considering creative ways to get Americans and others in Kabul airport, or into the airport rather, for evacuation from Afghanistan amid acute security threats. Said the Pentagon on Sunday ordered 6 U.S. commercial airlines to help move evacuees from temporary sites outside of Afghanistan. At the 1-week mark since the Taliban completed its takeover of the country, the U.S. directed airlift from Kabul continued Sunday, even as the U.S. officials expressed growing concern about the threat from the Islamic State group. But that worry comes on top of obstacles to that mission from the Taliban, as well as U.S. government bureaucratic problems. Biden met with Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and other members of his national security team to discuss the situation in Afghanistan. The White House said and planned to provide public update from Afghanistan later in the day. Afghanistan will be the chief topic of discussion when Biden and leaders of the Group of 7 industrialized nations meet virtually on Tuesday. Come on, man! look, I want to go in front of Boris, man. Boris will come and clap me on the back and tell me how great I am. And I want to go see Boris, man. Hey, let's go have G7 in person. Come on, man. The threat is real, it's acute, it is persistent, and something we're focused with every tool in our arsenal, said Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. Sullivan said on CNN's State of the Union that 3,900 people have been airlifted out of Kabul on U.S. military flights over the past 24 hours. The U.S. defense official, speaking on condition of anonymity to provide details not yet made public, said those people were flown on a total of 23 flights, 14 by C-17 transports, and 9 aboard C-130 cargo planes. That represents an increase of about 16,000 flown out aboard U.S. military planes in the previous 24 hours, but remains far below the 5,000 and 9,000 that the military says has the capacity to airlift daily. Sullivan also said about 3,900 people were airlifted on non-U.S. military flights over the past 24 hours. The Biden admin has given no firm estimate of the number of Americans seeking to leave Afghanistan. Some have put the total between 10,000 and 15,000. Jeez. Why were there that many people over there? Sullivan on Sunday put it at several thousand. Speaking on ABC's This Week, Austin said that Biden's August 31st deadline for ending the evacuation operation approaches. He will recommend whether to give it more time. Tens of thousands of... Oof. That's not going to go over well, folks. He can give it more time if he wants, but that is not going to go over well. With the people that are involved with this whole thing, that is not going to go over well at all. Tens of thousands of Americans and others have yet to be flown out of the country. Austin's interview with ABC aired Sunday, but was taped on Saturday. In a notice on Sunday, the State Department urged people seeking to leave Afghanistan as part of an organized private evacuation effort not to come to the Kabul airport until you have received specific instructions to do so from the U.S. Embassy's flight organizer. The notice says that others, including American citizens, who have received specific instructions from the embassy to make their way to the airport, should do so. Austin said the airlift would continue for as long as possible. The optics of this, my God, seriously. What do we see coming off of this? We see another fall of Saigon. I don't know how people don't see this at this point, but some of the mainstream media is trying to say that this is nothing like this. We have thousands, 5 figures worth of people, probably more, I'm not going to lie, but 5 figures worth of people minimum over here in this airport, in this country, trying desperately to get out. Taking them one airplane at a time. The American citizens are being airlifted out of the country. How is this not Saigon at this point? I don't know. But it is not going to go over well if they extend this deadline again. It's not going to go over well at all. And honestly, the nerves of steel, because they're talking about putting commercial flights over there to get more people out of the country in a more organized fashion. But I mean, how do you do that as a pilot, knowing full well? And I mean, they're not going to shoot the planes down coming in, but I mean, that's got to be nerves of steel and white knuckle flying back up out of there, knowing full well that the hostile force that hates Americans could take you, not just you, but a plane full of people, down out of the sky for really no reason other than, haha, fuck you. I don't think I could do that. I don't think I could be that courageous. I'm not going to lie. I'd like to pretend that I would be, but I don't think I could be. That is some nerves of steel. So if these commercial pilots are doing so, and I mean, I'm not talking just about the property loss of some of these airlines losing planes like this. Boeing is making new planes every day, and these guys are getting big government bailouts out of this. The fact that you are going in as a human being and taking thousands of human beings out, one plane full at a time, that has got to be nerves of steel stuff right there. But we'll see where it goes, how it goes, and how quickly it goes. And we'll see what happens from there. All right, let's move in to News18.com. Exiled Afghanistan President Ashraf Ghani's brother extends support to the Taliban. Report. Looks like I have no author given. In a major embarrassment for Afghanistan's exiled president, Ashraf Ghani, who was facing tremendous flack for deserting his people and country amid a violent blitzkrieg by the Taliban. From what I understand on the ground, and I wasn't there, but from what I understand, it wasn't that violent. How does the impression go? Hey, leader of this province here. The U.S. sucks, and the president supports them. You want to join the Taliban? Cool. You want to play golf later? Cool. That's how I meant, from the way that it fell and from some of the reports that I've been, that's how I imagine it all fell. Not a violent takeover. But still, they call it a violent blitzkrieg. His brother Hashmat Ghani, Ahmadzai, allegedly pledged allegiance to the insurgents, the local Afghan media reported. According to reports, Hashmat Ghani Ahmadzai, chief of the Grand Council of Kuchis, announced his support for the group in the presence of the Taliban leader Khalil-ur-Rehman and religious scholar Mufti Mahmoud Zakir. Pictures of the meeting have since gone viral. The exiled president, who fled Afghanistan amid Taliban takeover, is now settled in the United Arab Emirates along with his family. Ghani was earlier reported to have taken shelter in neighboring Tajikistan and Uzbekistan. In a recent report from the Afghan embassy in Tajikistan has demanded that Interpol arrest the former president, Afghan National Security Advisor Hamdullah Mohib, and the former chief advisor to Ghani, Fazel Mahmoud, for theft of the treasury. The Afghanistan embassy has demanded Ghani to hand over the treasury to an international tribunal to restore the people's wealth. So, yeah, that's probably going over well. 20 years. 20 years, and this is what we get. The president running away, all the provincial leaders saying, cool, have at my people, yo. And the brother of the guy who is supposed to be our great ally in the East, the president of Afghanistan, saying, hey, cool, I'm going to join the Taliban, yo. This is optics fail on a massive scale. All right, from Politico, Biden admin activates U.S. airlines for Afghanistan evacuations. This is from Oriana Palwick. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has activated the Civil Reserve Air Fleet, asking U.S. airlines and charter carriers to transport Afghan evacuees from locations in the Middle East and Europe to other areas of the world. Austin on Sunday called for the first stage mobilization of CRAF to perform airlift services. The Pentagon said in a statement the stage asked for a limited amount of aircraft, 3 each from American Airlines, Atlas, Delta Airlines, and Omni Air, 2 from Hawaiian Airlines, 4 Boeing 777s from United Airlines, for a total of 18 planes. CRAF activated aircraft will not fly into Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul, defense officials said. They will be used for the onward movement of passengers from temporary safe havens and interim staging bases, allowing CRAF increases passengers' movement beyond organic capability and allows military aircraft to focus on operations in and out of Kabul. Department of Defense said it does not anticipate a major impact to commercial flights from this activation. Airlines on Friday were asked to get ready in case they would be needed to ferry thousands of people who have been rescued from Kabul since the Taliban took over on August 15th. Evacuations have continued aboard military aircraft, moving roughly 7,000 U.S. citizens and personnel, special immigrant visa applicants, and other at-risk individuals from Afghanistan to locations such as Ramstein Air Force Base. Is the air base in Germany really called Ramstein? Du hast mich. And Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. The latest mobilization means CRAF has now been activated for the third time since it was created after World War II. The CRAF was established in 1951 as an emergency authorization to use commercial and charter planes to augment airlift and resupply missions. It was previously used during Operations Desert Shield/Desert Storm in 1990 and again in 2003 in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. The Defense Department and U.S. Transportation Command are the activating authority for CRAF. The airlines volunteer for the program, which also involves the Department of Transportation. Commercial carriers retain their civil status under the Federal Aviation Administration regulations, while U.S. Transcom exercises mission control via its air component, Air Mobility Command, the Pentagon said. Airlines for America, the trade group for the major U.S. airlines, on Saturday told Politico it has been in communication with admin officials on the matter. U.S. carriers have been offering support as needed for the past week, and they remain in frequent communication with the U.S. government agencies and officials to determine flight support needs, A4A said. So I'm very curious about the logistics of this and how this is actually going to work. I like the idea that they're going and doing this, and I feel a little bit better about the fact they're not going to Kabul, but where the temporary bases are, I mean, is this in Afghanistan? Are they doing this in places just outside the border? I'm very curious about that and how this goes. I'd love to look into this. As a StarCraft player, or former StarCraft player, because I haven't been able to bring myself to open Blizzard.com more than a couple times since the whole Blitzchung thing. I paid for it, so I should be able to sleep at night actually playing the game, but I still just can't bring myself to open up that particular menu. But as a StarCraft player, looking at the logistics of airlift support and how to run a mission like that, because I remember some of the old StarCraft games from StarCraft 1, where you were doing airlifts like that, and sometimes you had to stage in places where the enemy wouldn't come back and see. I'm curious as to how this goes. And where they stage things from. So I actually want to research this and figure out how they're doing this. Because it does seem like a bad idea to fly a U.S. commercial airline into Kabul. But we'll see. From CNN. 5 things you want the news summarized each morning. Get 5 things directly to your inbox, or listen to the podcast for daily briefings. No. Dozens of U.S. Air Force planes head to Kabul as 2,000 people remain at the airport. From Nick Payton Walsh. Dozens of U.S. military transport jets were expected to land at Kabul's international airport on Monday, as about 20,000 people remained at the facility awaiting evacuation, a source close to the situation told CNN. Plans call for 33 U.S. Air Force C-17s to head to Hamid Karzai International Airport in the next 24 hours, said the source. Each of the large 4-engine jets has the ability to take 400 passengers out of Kabul, which should make a decent dent in the 20,000 people who are on the airport grounds and trying to get out of Afghanistan after the Taliban took control of most of the country last week, the source said. But the source said Washington was changing its policy on who would be admitted into the airport and from Monday on, only American citizens and green card holders and citizens of NATO countries would be allowed past the airport's gates. Guess what, those of you who help the American citizens as translators and other services? You know that vague promise you got of escaping Afghanistan if something bad happened? Surprise! Yeah, Random we'll fly a commercial plane over there and turn that over to the Taliban too. Ah! Ahmed! Look at that new plane! It is a new private jet. And it comes stock. With all the peanuts we can eat. Oh, Mohammed, this will be a glorious day as we have our new private plane. We will fly all over the world. Applicants for the U.S. Special Immigrant Program, which is an avenue for Afghans who work for the U.S. government, forces, and agencies to get out of the country, would not be allowed into the airport, the source said. But hey, no more mean tweets. They said the Taliban were now helping filter candidates seeking to enter the airport By checking their documentation, only immediate family members such as spouses and children can be brought onto the base by eligible U.S. or NATO citizens. Even with the new restrictions, thousands of Afghans, mostly military-aged males with no documentation, remained on the airport grounds, the source said. They had arrived on the second day during everyone gets in laps and filtering entrance. The source said there were no plans to kick people off the airport, potentially leaving thousands in limbo. Yeah, this administration and the administration they learned from, they're really good at leaving immigrants in immigration limbo. DACA. Oh, I'm sorry, was the cough supposed to cover DACA? One reason for the chaos was the decision to issue electronic visas without names or document numbers to SIV applicants. The visas were then copied as screenshots and sent by Afghans to thousands of other Afghans who were not eligible for access to the airport, a source told CNN this weekend. I don't think Consular or the administration frankly realizes how badly they fucked up by sending that stupid visa and letting everyone in for 24 hours straight, the source said on Monday. Some people are saying there's no way they'll even get close those currently on airport out of here in 4 days, the source added. Yeah. I don't know how anybody tries to spin this as a win. And we're starting to see some of the mainstream media try to get away from this as fast as they can, because there's no way. This is a policy fail on the highest order. I don't even know, just given on some of this. Now, yes, we wouldn't have the Taliban sweeping in the way that they did under the original agreement, but I don't even know if a competent administration would be able to do something better than this at this point. I don't know. I really don't. I'd like to believe that they could, but I don't know anymore at this point. I think this was all a lost cause. The Blaze. Kamala Harris criticized for response after a reporter confronts her about Afghan crisis. From Chris Enlow, we finally get to hear from this one, who has been in hiding since the major speech last week, where she stood behind the houseplant chief. "We did it, Joe!" As she looks away, disappointed. Like, how the fuck did I get involved in this? Vice President Kamala Harris generated criticism Sunday after she responded to recent questions about the Afghanistan crisis by laughing and claiming the Biden admin couldn't have a higher priority right now. After embarking on her Southeast Asia tour, Harris addressed a gaggle of reporters on the airport tarmac, cutting off a reporter who began to ask her about the ongoing crisis in Afghanistan. "What's your response to reports about the Americans?" the reporter began, speaking over the sounds of jet engines. "Hold on, hold on, hold on," Harris said, cutting off the reporter. "Slow down, everyone," Harris added after letting out a big laugh. Let's listen to that.
"What's your response to reports of Americans?"
Hold on. Slow down, everybody. I want to talk about two things. First, Afghanistan. We couldn't have a higher priority right now, and in particular, our priority is making sure that we safely evacuate American citizens, Afghans who worked with us, Afghans at risk, including women and children, and that is one of our highest, if not the highest priority right now. And if
"What's your response to reports of Americans?"
Hold on. Slow down, everybody.
Critics panned Harris not only for her inopportune laughing, but claiming that Afghanistan crisis is the administration's highest priority while she spends the week in Southeast Asia. "We couldn't have a higher priority right now. That's why I'm going to board this plane and depart the self-inflicted catastrophe," one person mocked. "Higher priority? Yeah, as she leaves the country," another person said. "No higher priority, which is why I'm in Singapore," one person mocked. "I'm not a fan of hers, but I think she does this whenever she gets nervous. Ask her a tough question and she does that cackle," one person observed. "Whether true or not, she does just exude this sense of not caring about anything outside of herself," one person noted. But hey, no more mean tweets, right? Am I right? No more mean tweets. That's the goal. That's what we needed to do. Get rid of the mean tweets. And she's on a Southeast Asia tour in Singapore, starting yesterday. She will travel to Vietnam on Tuesday before departing the region for the U.S. on Thursday. Good morning, Vietnam! We have just sent you one of our newest tyrants in this country over to meet with your tyrants in your country. Let's grab one from Reuters here. U.S. lawmakers condemn PM Johnson and U.S. President Biden over Afghanistan. From William James and Elizabeth Piper. British lawmakers vented their anger on Wednesday at Prime Minister Boris Johnson and U.S. President Joe Biden. Yeah, U.S. intelligence and Joe Biden don't go together by any stretch of the imagination. We have the Taliban in the chat too, I see that. I would personally like to thank your president, Mr. Joe Biden, for all the weapons and military vehicles he left behind for us. Now the infidels will be dragged through the streets. Mazel tov. I know that you people in the Taliban like those words. Mazel tov. Calling it a failure of intelligence, leadership, and moral duty. Like I said, intelligence and President Biden don't really go together. Speaking in an emergency session of Parliament recalled from its summer break to discuss Afghanistan, Johnson said the Taliban would be judged on their actions, not the words, after they seek to convince the world they would not seek revenge. But barely a minute into his opening address, Johnson faced a critical interruption from a member of his own Conservative Party, setting the tone for what would be a skeptically received speech about how Britain wanted to be at the heart of an international coalition, holding the Taliban to account. We will judge this regime based on its choices it makes and by its actions rather than its words on its attitude to terrorism, to crime and narcotics, as well as humanitarian access and the rights of girls to receive an education, Johnson said. Johnson, who attempted to head to holiday on Saturday only to return as the Taliban closed in on the Afghan capital, was accused of careless leadership by opposition Labour leader Keir Starmer. Yeah, I don't know if Labour would have done any better in this situation. There's been a major miscalculation of resilience of the Afghan forces and staggering complacency from our government about the Taliban, Starmer said. Former Conservative PM Theresa May also asked how Britain could have so miscalculated the strength of the Taliban, which took Kabul on Sunday in a lightning offensive. Was it our understanding of the Afghan government was weak? Was our knowledge of the position on the ground so inadequate? She asked her successor. Or did we just leave? Or did we just feel that we have to follow the United States and hope that, on a wing and a prayer, it would all be alright on the night? The speed of the Taliban's gains after U.S.-led forces withdrew the bulk of their troops from Afghanistan surprised the West, didn't surprise me. I'm in the West. I saw it coming, dude. Leaving many nations having to scramble to get their diplomats and Afghans who helped them out of the country. Several lawmakers on Wednesday focused on the U.S. decision to withdraw, a move which Johnson admitted left Britain with no choice but to pull out its own forces, and Biden's subsequent criticism of Afghan forces' surrenders. Tom Tugendhat, a Conservative lawmaker and chairman of Parliament's Foreign Affairs Select Committee, who himself served the Afghanistan, told the hushed chamber that he, like other veterans, felt anger and grief. I've watched good men go into the earth, taking with them a part of me and a part of all of us, he said. To see Biden call into question the courage of the men I fought with to claim that they ran is shameful. Those who never fought for the colors they fly should be careful about criticizing those who have. So, there is England's response to all of this stuff. Our foreign policy is back, and we don't do it by mean tweet anymore. We're respected in the world again. All right, from NBC. Biden says U.S. may extend Afghanistan withdrawal deadline as evacuations continue. From Alan Smith. President Biden said Sunday the U.S. was considering extending the evacuation efforts beyond his August 31st deadline to leave Afghanistan as he defended the admin's handling of the war's final days. Speaking to reporters at the White House, Biden said, "There were discussions among us and the military about extending. Our hope is that we will not have to extend it," he said. Well, see, you've already extended it, so what's the difference at this point? Biden pointed to new numbers of evacuees as a contrast to the chaotic scenes at Hamid Karzai International Airport in Kabul, where thousands of people remain to be airlifted out of the country after the Taliban seized control of vast parts of the territory this month. Biden said the U.S. has evacuated about 11,000 people in over 30 hours over the weekend. He said about 28,000 U.S. citizens, allies, and Afghans have been secured since the Taliban's takeover of Kabul on August 15th, adding that 33,000 people have been transported since July. Yeah, what about September 11th? What about May 1st, Mr. President? I don't see a good time happening if you stay past August at this point. I really don't. And I do see that there might be some American citizens dying, which at this point in this administration, I can't believe that they're not hoping for this at this point. We're leaving Afghanistan and I voted for it, and our mission wasn't done and the Taliban took over, and what kind of propaganda can we put out there to justify us going back in? What's better than them killing one of our own, man? Come on, man. Come on. What a fucking mess. Alright, let's keep going here. Let's talk about the Daily Wire here. NBC News abruptly cuts away from Biden press conference as questions fired at him. So we're going to watch the video. Let's go with this. And I'm going to step away for a sec while we're watching the video. On an NBC News special report that was covering President Biden's news conference on Sunday, NBC News abruptly cut away from the news conference as soon as Biden started to take a question from the press. Biden concluded his prepared statement by saying, and I'll keep you informed every day as we move forward. May God protect our troops and our diplomats who are serving in harm's way. And I'll take a few questions. Darlene from the Associated Press. Darlene Superville, White House reporter for the Associated Press, asked, "Mr. President, we're 9 days away from the August 31st deadline. Will you extend that deadline? Or what's your thought process on extending the evacuation operation?" NBC News' Kate Snow nodded, possibly obeying an instruction given in her earphone, then cut in, "All right, we've been listening to President Biden with dual challenges on Sunday, talking about Tropical Storm Henry, all the preparations being made, also talking about Afghanistan. Let's get right to Monica Alba, who's at the White House." So let's listen to what that sounded like, and yes, I'm going to step away for a sec while we're watching that. So I will be right back with you guys. Let's listen.
I'll keep you informed every day as we move forward. May God protect our troops and our diplomats and who are serving in harm's way. Now, I'll take a few questions. Darlene from the Associated Press.
Mr. President?
Yes.
We're 9 days away from the August 31st deadline. Will you extend that deadline, or what is your thought process on extending the evacuation operation?
There's discussion.
All right, we've been listening to President Biden with dual challenges on a Sunday, talking about Tropical Storm Henri, all the preparations being made, also talking about Afghanistan. Let's get right to Monica Alba, who's at the White House.
I'll keep you informed every day as we move forward. May God protect our troops and our diplomats and who are serving in harm's way. Now, I'll take a few questions. Darlene from the Associated Press.
Mr. President?
Yes.
We're 9 days away from the August 31st deadline. Will you extend that deadline, or what is your thought process on extending the evacuation operation?
There's discussion.
All right, we've been listening to President Biden with dual challenges on a Sunday, talking about Tropical Storm Henri, all the preparations being made, also talking about Afghanistan. Let's get right to Monica Alba, who's at the White House.
I'll keep you informed every day as we move forward. May God protect our troops and our diplomats and who are serving in harm's way. Now, I'll take a few questions. Darlene from the Associated Press.
All right, sorry to make you listen to that one 3 times. Allergy season is a bit of a bitch. but we will power through it because the news stops for nobody. I do love this, and I've listened to this 3 times as well because the wireless headphones let me step away while still listening to this here. And the thing I got to say about that is I do love the fact that Biden can come on here and say, "Oh, all right, we're going to start with this reporter, and her question is written down in front of me. So I've studied this extensively for 24 hours and made sure I've got an answer for this." And they're still cutting away off of this. Whereas, what was it? I mean, under the Barack administration, under Clinton, under W, and even under Trump, what was it always with reporters? This is one of the first times I can remember seeing pre-selected questions like this. Darlene, you go first here. What did you always get when we have something like this? Mr. President, do you really hate your wife like the news media says they do? Mr. President, tell us how you feel about this. Mr. President. That's how we usually get this. Clawing over each other to get their first questions heard. Tim Graham, Director of Media Analysis at the Media Research Center and Executive Editor of the blog Newsbusters, pointed out that Biden's staff reportedly hasn't wanted him to take questions. Last Thursday, award-winning investigative journalist Logan fired off a challenge to the mainstream media to ask Biden questions that had been reluctant to ask. She stated U.S. media needs to ask why U.S. Intel NSA allowed sensitive military equipment to be transported to Pakistan without doing anything. Why is the Biden admin not acknowledging the Afghan government? VP Amrullah Salah hasn't surrendered, announcing he's acting president under the Constitution U.S. helped draft. This is from townhall.com. Biden walks away from the podium after talking about vaccines and mask mandates for 15 minutes. Not a single question, no mention of the crisis in Afghanistan. Shameful. This is from August 18th.
We just need to finish the job with science, with facts, and with confidence. And together, as the United States of America, we'll get this done. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. We just need to finish.
A Zogby Analytics conducted May 26th to 27th found roughly 2/3 of likely U.S. voters. 63% agreed that the mainstream media was protecting President Biden. In late April, the Pew Research Center compared the way media compared Biden's first days as president to the way they covered former President Trump's over the same period. They wrote, "When it comes to tone of coverage, both new administrations received more negative assessments than positive assessments of their activities, but while the percentage of Biden stories with an overall negative assessment, 32% modestly outnumbered the share with positive assessments, 23%. Stories with negative assessments of Trump outnumbered those with positive assessments by 4-1, 44% to 11%. So, yeah, I mean, and that's always something new for a presidency. And, I mean, we knew what was coming off of this, but hey, you know what? No more mean tweets. And that's the important part. Most popular president in history. More votes than even Barack Obama. Honk honk. Nothing bad happened in the election. Honk honk. Most popular, most loved president in United States history. Had to have D.C. locked down for 4 months because he was so popular. All right, let's talk about some private charity here. Oklahoma mom of 11 rescues members of Afghan all-girls robotics team. The mother of 11 is still working to get 25 more girls from the team to safety. From Patrick Riley. An Oklahoma mother of 11 flew to Qatar earlier this month to help rescue 10 members of Afghanistan's all-girls robotics team and is hoping to save more as the Taliban takes power in Kabul. Allison Renu, a 60-year-old Harvard grad with a master's in international relations and U.S. space policy, took it upon herself to try and save members of the Afghan girls' robotics team, according to NBC. She flew to Qatar on August 19th after making a Hail Mary call to former roommate at the U.S. Embassy there to help get the girls from the advancing Taliban, known for their oppressive treatment of women. Renu had been in contact with a team made of girls aged 16 to 18 since 2019, when she worked on the board of directors for Explore Mars and met the girls when they attended the organization's annual Humans to Mars conference. The team was hailed in Western media as the future of war ravaged the country, as well as a shining example of how women's rights had improved after the U.S. invaded following 9/11. Renew said she couldn't shake the feeling the girls were in danger while watching the news of the advancing insurgent army in early August. The first step she took was to call Senator Jim Inhofe, a ranking member of the Armed Services Committee, but that lead went cold when the senator became overwhelmed with the need to help our American citizens, Renew told NBC. Then she decided to try herself, hopping on a flight towards the Middle East, but still thousands of miles from Afghanistan. Her friend in Qatar was thankfully able to help her once she arrived. I remembered my former roommate in D.C. a couple years ago was transferred to Qatar, Renew told NBC. She said the girls... she worked in the U.S. Embassy in Qatar. She was sure her boss would approve helping the girls. She wrote up a request. I got all the passports together, Renew said, and she went back to the embassy at midnight and worked all night to prepare the documents and packets for the girls. Private charity, folks. And this actually warms my heart a little bit here because I hate the government. I hate the fact that they fuck everything up that they touch. But I do look at this and I say, yes, this is what private charity can do that the government can't do. And I'm excited for that because that's the kind of thing we need to see. Is what the government cannot do, private charity stepping up for. And we always talk about families, community groups, and churches coming back and helping out where the government can't help out. And, you know, here we are. Here's a woman putting her money where her mouth is. So definitely glad to see that. We will probably hear more of that in human rights and human interest stories in the weeks to come as we go along. I've got an analysis, an op-ed here from Stephen Collinson over on CNN. Biden tries for a reset after a nightmare week in Kabul. From Stephen Collinson. President Biden wants to convince Americans he's in charge and understands the heartache caused by a week of pain, politically damaging chaos in Kabul. Unleashed by his botched Afghanistan withdrawal plan, Biden is seeking to seize back the initiative and paint a picture of a commander-in-chief on top of a crisis. Days after which he appeared overtaken by dire events, defiant about his decisions, indifferent to the suffering of Afghan civilians, and more in the mood to blame others than take responsibility. They're working hard and fast as we can to get the people out, Biden said in a televised address to the nation on Sunday that attempted to reframe the confusion and point to real improvements to rescue efforts, but also to hedge against possible reversals in a fraught security situation amid terror threats in Kabul. Our determination is to get every American citizen home to evacuate our Afghan allies is unwavering, the president said, after he canceled a weekend in Delaware to stay close to his national security and disaster management teams. His remarks, which still raise more questions when an official later clarified Biden's statements about the expansion of a safe zone around Kabul airport, carried a strong sense of political reset, following a week in which images of helicopters lifting off from U.S. Embassy in Kabul projected the impression of a humiliating retreat after a 20-year war that ended in defeat. There's rarely been a moment in this presidency when trust in the president's word and his truthfulness have been more important. The rampage of the Delta variant of COVID-19 across the country is now averaging 150,000 new cases per day. 6 weeks after Biden... Oh wait, that's not his quote anymore. What the fuck am I doing? What am I doing with my life here? Seriously. 6 weeks after Biden declared partial independence from the virus, while the president has little control over Americans who refuse to get vaccinated and left themselves vulnerable to the disease, the prolonging of the emergency threatens the economy and democratic prospects in 2022 midterm elections. Millions of American school kids are meanwhile returning to in-person classes amid a political war over masks, and with parents frantic to worry about a virus that is now posing a greater threat to children. So, he's trying to reset it. He's trying to get back in front of this here. And like I said on Saturday, with the botching of the infrastructure plan, there's a lot that can happen in 3 years. There is a lot that can happen in the next 3 years. I mean, all the crises are coming to a head right at the front of this administration. But with mainstream media help, especially in covering a lot of stuff up, there's a lot of stuff that could change between now and 2024. What's going to happen from this? I don't know. Who's going to be the president in 3 years? I don't know. I don't know who's going to be the president next year. I'm not going to lie. Because there are massive demands to take out Biden, but also to take out Harris and Pelosi, knowing full well that the three of them in lockstep would be causing the same disasters. And there is a big Democrat Party interest in what's happening in Afghanistan right now. I shudder to think of the fact that there might be a President Pelosi, but it might happen. We're at a point right now where that's actually a reality that could be happening in the near future. I don't know how we got to that point in life, but there's a point that's a possible reality. So we will see what happens with that. Let's grab one from Fox News. Biden's epic Afghanistan debacle. Here's what it means for the Dems' progressive agenda. This is an opinion piece from Liz Peek. Americans are furious, and rightly so. Our country has been humiliated as never before, with our military humbled by an illiterate and ragtag army of Taliban fanatics. Our allies are stunned by the incompetence of our chaotic retreat from Afghanistan, dubbed imbecilic by former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair, and horrified by the humanitarian disaster now taking place. Meanwhile, our barely conscious president has lied about the disappearance of al-Qaeda from Afghanistan with the supportiveness of our allies and about Americans being able to access Kabul airport. Worse, he is defending the indefensible. How can anyone defend abandoning the strategically critical Bagram airfield in the dead of night, gifting our enemies untold amounts of armaments, and not preparing for the evacuation of tens of thousands of Americans? How can anyone say it's okay for the French, Germans, and British to send forces into Kabul to rescue their own people while the U.S. troops are told to stand down? Heads should roll, but not under the insipid and gutless guidance, not leadership, of Joe Biden. They will not. Instead, his Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, and Vice President Kamala Harris serve as props, standing literally and not figuratively behind the president as he struggles to answer questions from a suddenly inquisitive press corps. The only remotely positive aspect of this epic disaster unfolding in Afghanistan is this. All Americans, indeed the entire world, have now seen the real Joe Biden and will now question the president's credibility and capability. I don't want to vote for Joe Biden. Please don't make me vote for Joe Biden. Mounting doubts about this president will undermine his ability to lead his party to victory in 2022 and threaten to derail his progressive freight train. That's good news for the country. Republicans have long sounded alarms over Biden's truthfulness and his ability to perform the duties of his office, while the liberal media has joined Democrats in blocking the public's view of our failing president. A new poll shows the country wising up. Imagine a Rasmussen survey finds only 39% of likely U.S. voters think Biden is doing the job of the president, while a majority think that others are actually running the country, making the decisions for Biden behind the scenes. Never before has the public concluded that the U.S. president is a puppet. It is a shocking suggestion. Well, Liz, no, they've been talking about that for a long time. They talked about Bush being a Cheney puppet. They talked about Obama being an NWO puppet. They talked about Trump being a Russia puppet. The president is a puppet. That's nothing new. Perhaps the majority of Americans thinking that. I still don't buy that either. That's one poll. That's an outlier. Never before has the public concluded that the U.S. Anyway, such is the damage done by the calamity of Kabul, where the New York Times, a former newspaper, edges towards calling the president a liar, reporting that Biden made several misleading or false claims about the pullout and evacuation. You know the landscape has shifted. And I'm gonna conclude reading this right now, but I'm gonna point out what Liz pointed out right up here. This is going to make it hard for Democrats to govern. This is going to take away their mandate to govern at this point. Which is a good thing, because we saw the Ilhan Omars, the AOC biscuits, the Rashida Tlaibs, those kind of people, hoping that they could get Joe Biden in to get rid of the unfettered capitalist president. And see everything going smoothly, everything going wonderfully and smoothly, and use this to usher in socialism on a mandate to govern. They thought that they could get rid of the orange man and have a victory on midterms. As it sits right now, 7 months in, if this continues for the next 7 months, I have to wonder if this is going to be a defeat for Democrats in the midterms or a fucking curb stomp where we have both chambers so red that nothing is movable past the Biden admin. Honestly, I'm a little bit weary of getting to a point where not only do we have a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate of Republicans, but on top of this, a veto-proof majority in both of them, rendering the office completely useless. Because I think it could happen at this point. Now, of course, leave it to the media to come back out and manufacture a crisis that would mainly affect Republicans coming in off of this to hopefully try to hold on to the presidency in 2024. We could see that, but I mean, as we sit right now, the mandate has got to be gone. All right, and with that, we move off of Afghanistan, and we move on to other stuff here, which we've still got a full show coming up here. This is an interesting one. Exclusive: FBI finds scant evidence U.S. Capitol attack was coordinated sources. So more good news for the Biden admin. Those evil Trump supporters, it's an insurrection. They've been planning this online forever. Well, that doesn't seem the case. In fact, do I have enough space to spin around all the way? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to steal that bit twice. But, fuck you, I was right. In fact, from listening to some of this and reading into some of this, it definitely sounds like this was more of a couple of charismatic people on the front, be they Antifa, FBI, or Democrat operatives any other way, led the charge and went in to go bust down the door, and we saw a large amount of monkey see, monkey do, in coordination with police officers who just opened the door and let the people in. Just like we've been saying since January. I wonder if some of the people that are sitting in a cell right now with awaiting charges might get released on some of this here. This is from Mark Hausenball and Sarah N. Lynch. The FBI has found scant evidence that the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol was the result of an organized plot to overturn the presidential election result, according to 4 current and former law enforcement officials. Though federal officials have arrested more than 570 alleged participants, the FBI at this point believes the violence was not centrally coordinated by far-right groups or prominent supporters of then-President Trump, according to the sources who have been either directly involved or briefed regularly on the wide-ranging investigations. 90 to 95% of these are one-off cases, said former senior law enforcement official with knowledge of the investigation. Then you have 5% maybe of these militia groups that were more closely organized, but then there was no grand scheme with Roger Stone and Alex Jones and all these people to storm the Capitol and take hostages. Stone, a veteran Republican, operative, and self-described dirty trickster, and Jones, founder of a conspiracy-driven radio show and webcast, are both allies of Trump and have been involved in pro-Trump events in Washington on January 5th, the day before the riot. FBI investigators did not find that the cells of protesters, including followers of the far-right Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, had aimed to break into the Capitol, but they found no evidence that the groups had serious plans about what to do if they made it inside, the sources said. Persecutors have filed conspiracy charges against 40 of those defendants, alleging that they engaged in some degree of planning before the attack. They allege that one of the Proud Boys leaders recruited members and urged them to stockpile bulletproof vests and other military-style equipment in the weeks before. The Proud Boys are fucking psyop too. They're glowing just as much as everything else at this point. In the weeks before the attack on January 6th, sent members forward with a plan to split into groups and make multiple entries into the Capitol. But so far, persecutors have steered clear of more serious politically loaded charges with that the sources said had initially been discussed by persecutors such as seditious conspiracy or racketeering. The FBI's assessment could prove relevant for a congressional investigation that also aims to determine how the day's events were organized and by whom. Well, they weren't. Apparently, according to this report, they weren't. Senior lawmakers have been briefed in detail on the results of the FBI's investigation so far and find them credible, a Democratic congressional source said. The chaos on 1/6 erupted as U.S. Senate and House of Representatives met to certify Biden's victory in November's presidential election. It was the most violent attack on the Capitol since the War of 1812, forcing lawmakers and Trump's own vice president to scramble for safety. Bullshit it was. It was a day of people in there with their phones and their tablets and everything else that they could bring in there, kneeling down next to the Capitol Police, taking selfies, doing stupid shit that they shouldn't have been doing, that I told you people not to do, by the way. I said, do not go to the Capitol because it's a trap. They are trying to urge people to go in there, and they're going to trap them into major charges, which now they have no basis to do major charges. This was a lot of mob run and a lot of monkey see, monkey do. Just like I said it was. A couple of charismatic people at the front, be they actual Trump supporters, be they Oath Keepers, be they Proud Boys, who are a psyop at this point, be they Antifa, be they FBI, be they Democrat operatives, somebody at the front of the group went and said, let's go bust open the Capitol door. And 1,000 people looked in and said, hey, this looks like a good idea. Let's go with this person. In the spur of the moment. There was no planning for this. And the FBI now knows it. From the Hill, the FBI comes up empty-handed in its search for January 6th plot. From Jonathan Turley, opinion contributor. It may be true, as Confucius said, that the beginning of wisdom is to call things by their proper name, but it can also be the end of politics. For politicians, labeling controversies is often more important than addressing the controversies themselves. Even well-defined terms used in legislation must change to fit political needs, such as like infrastructure, when its real meaning proved too restrictive. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand simply tweeted, paid leave is infrastructure, childcare is infrastructure, caregiving is infrastructure, done. The same is true when labeling political violence. When protests by Black Lives Matter and other groups turned violent last summer, some media employees were expressly told not to refer to rioters, but rather protesters. Riots causing massive property damage were described by CNN as fiery but mostly peaceful protests. Conversely, the January 6th attack on the Capitol could not be just a riot, let alone a fiery protest, but only an insurrection. Many in the media continue referring to the insurrectionists rather than the rioters. National Public Radio even ran a running account of the Capitol insurrection. The term was further driven home by House Democrats by impeaching the former president for incitement to insurrection, despite undermining any chance for any actual conversation. Members of Congress, such as Representative Eric Swalwell, are still in federal court claiming a conspiracy of armed and organized insurrectionists. The characterization of the attack as an insurrection served a myriad at political and personal purposes. First, it painted anyone associated with challenging the 2020 election results as supporting sedition and the country's overthrow. Second, if this was a protest allowed to turn into a riot, there would be more questions about the failure to properly protect the Capitol. It's easier to excuse a response to an insurrection than a violent protest. That point was expressly made by former U.S. Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund, who insisted this was not a demonstration. This was not a failure to plan for the demonstration. This was a planned, coordinated attack on the U.S. Capitol. Despite the adoption of the term by many in the media, there has been a growing disconnect with the actual cases in court. Indeed, a new report from Reuters disclosed that the FBI apparently struggled to support the account of a coordinated insurrection on January 6th. Reuters FBI sources said that despite the months of intense investigation, they could find scant evidence of any organized plot, and instead found that virtually all the cases are one-offs. One agent explained, 90 to 95% of these are one-off cases. Then you have 5% maybe of these militia groups who are more closely organized, but there was no grand scheme with Roger Stone and Alex Jones and all the people to storm the Capitol and take hostages. Fuck you, I was right. I've been right about a lot of this as far as January 6th goes. I said, don't go to the Capitol. It's a trap. I told you guys that. This is a trap. They're going to get in there. I thought there was going to be more shooting. I thought they were going to kill more people than Ashley Babbitt. I thought the guard was going to be in there at the Capitol Police, and they were going to look for an opportunity to take out the automatic weapons and start mowing people down. That's what I thought was going to happen with it. But I told you right off the beginning, this is a trap. Don't do this. And then I said, afterwards, this looks a lot more like monkey see, monkey do than any coordinated attack to go in here that was led by a criminal orange mastermind who is simultaneously a retarded version of Hitler. I told you that too. And here we are. All right, let's do some coronavirus stuff. I gotta step away for a half a second. I will be right back again. One day they will find an allergy pill for me that works and doesn't knock me completely on my ass to the point that I can barely stand up and I get after I take it. But today will not be that day. Because the one that I took is not doing a damn thing for me. Let's talk about unemployment benefits. From Greg Iakurchi. States can pay benefits to the unemployed past a looming September 6th expiration date. Yeah, that's going to be the next fight that's coming down the pipe, by the way. Using pandemic funds that Congress previously allocated to state and local governments, Labor and Treasury Department officials said on Thursday. The American Rescue Plan, passed in March, extended pandemic-era unemployment benefits to Labor Day. More than 11 million jobless workers are poised to lose income support or see their aid reduced by $300 a week. But it may make sense for jobless workers to continue getting some income support past September 6th in states where unemployment remains high. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Labor Secretary Marty Walsh wrote in a letter to the heads of the Senate Finance and House Ways and Means Committees. Doing so will allow workers more time to find a job, they said. Meanwhile, the COVID-19 Delta variant may also pose short-term challenges to local economies and labor markets, according to the letter. States can use leftover money in the $350 billion American Rescue Plan State and Local Fiscal Relief Fund for the effort. They don't have to meet specific economic conditions to offer the assistance, according to a Labor Department spokesperson. Now, in states with a more gradual wind-down of income support for unemployed workers makes sense based on local economic conditions, American Rescue Plan's fund can be activated to cover the cost of providing assistance to unemployed workers. Beyond September 6th, Yellen and Walsh wrote to the Senate Finance Committee Chair Ron Wyden of Oregon, House Ways and Means Committee Chair Richard Neal of Massachusetts. So it's interesting that they're coming off and saying this because, I mean, there is massive amount of unspent money from the American Rescue Plan. There's a massive amount of unspent money for all this. It's huge, the amount of money that's out there that they didn't spend on a lot of this. And part of the reason for this is they didn't need to have all that money out there. But I mean, this is the second time we've heard something like this here. And the first time was with the funding of the police. In an effort to paint Republicans as those Republicans are the real ones who wanted to fund the police. And they voted against this. Every one of them voted against this plan, and they're going to defund the police because of it. Because, as you'll remember, the admin came out and pointed out the fact that, oh, hey, you could be using this leftover money from the American Rescue Plan you could use that to fund your police departments. Wouldn't that be fun? Why don't you guys go and do that? And yes, as I see some people pointing out in the chat of, yeah, there are plenty of jobs out there. It's not the fact that there are no jobs out there anymore. There are dozens upon dozens of jobs out there for these people. They don't want the job is the problem. They don't want to have the job. Because they might not go out and be able to celebrate and be an artist or something like that. It's not that there's no jobs out there. There are plenty of jobs out there. With this happening right along with the OnlyFans thing, and we'll talk about that a little bit later here. Yeah, all those jobs out there, they're going to be filled pretty fucking quickly. I know that restaurants need to have people right now. In-service restaurants and stuff like that, they need to have people right now. But I think it would be a hilarious irony right now if some of these people out there, especially former employees of the restaurants who decided they were going to make a big career off OnlyFans, and a lot of them did. We saw a lot more of those OnlyFans accounts pop up over the pandemic. Went back and looked at this now and said, oh, yeah, no, I can't hire you because you were an OnlyFans model. I don't think they're in a position to do that right now, but I think that would be a funny irony. Oh, you were too good to work for us before? Yeah, I'm not hiring you back. I've got 17 other people standing in line to come here and work. But right now, of course, they can't be that picky. But yes. Going back on, now it's, oh, just use the American Rescue Plan funding to do your unemployment because we can't do anymore. Imagine being on unemployment for a year and a half, too, by the way. I can't even begin to imagine how that is. All right. Let's see. Here's a speech that I've been trying to get to you guys for quite a while here from Matt Walsh. Here's my speech to the Nashville School Board, where I spoke out against the cruel and indefensible mask mandate for children. And this, of course, being the speech that got Carrie Underwood canceled. Let's have a listen.
Hi, my name is Matt Walsh. I'm a community member in Nashville and a father of 4. You and the school board have decided that our kids should go to school all day, every day, wearing muzzles like rabid dogs. I have listened to your arguments, and I've noticed that they're missing a few things, namely evidence, data, science, common sense, and basic human decency. You've presented no facts at all, so let me do that now. Here they are. COVID poses almost no risk to our kids at all. 4.2 million children have tested positive for COVID. A total of 0.008% of them have died. What about the flu? The CDC estimates that 480 kids died from the flu in the 2018-2019 season. That's more than have died from COVID in a year and a half. Now, did anyone on this board suggest at any point that year that kids wear masks? Did anyone in this room suggest that at any point anyone wear masks for flu, which again is more dangerous to kids than COVID? That's a fact. Now, do you know what it's called when you force your children to wear masks for fear of a virus that poses almost no threat to them? It's called child abuse. You want to look up a disease, look up Munchausen by proxy, because that's what this is. If you think I'm exaggerating, then how would you respond to a parent who forced his kid to wear a football helmet every day, all day, for fear of falling coconuts and meteors? Your kid is almost as likely to die of COVID as he is from a rock from the sky, and yet if you saw that, you would say to that parent that he is abusive, that he is forcing his kid to participate in this utterly insane charade in order to satisfy his delusional, psychotic hypochondria. Now, do any of you know what sort of psychological damage we do to children by forcing them to cover their faces, teaching them that the air is toxic, that everyone around them is sick? Have you wondered about the health effects of forcing kids to breathe through sweat and spit and dirt-soaked rags every single day? What about learning to read and they can't see the teacher enunciating the words? What does it do to a child's developing immune system if he has to wear a mask all day, every day? You're satisfied to place this burden on children anyway. And why? It's not to keep them safe. They are safe. It's not to keep the adults safe. They can all get vaccinated if they want. No, you do it to make yourselves feel better and to protect yourselves politically. The child's mask is a symbolic security blanket for you, not them. It's a disgrace and you should all be ashamed. Thank you for your time. Hi, my name is
No, I don't typically care for Matt Walsh, but I mean he's spot on at this point, and I do like the. I laughed out loud with the meteor analogy, but I still had the microphone off the time. I mean, yeah, if your child has a statistically the same how do you put it? The same chance of dying from a rock falling out of the sky as he does from COVID, and yet we force them to put this magical cloth on their face, and I mean that's what it is. The masks tell you right off the beginning. The masks tell you that they do not prevent the spread of COVID-19. In fact, they may do more, and we'll talk about that in just a second in the next article, but these safety features may do more to mitigate or to enhance the spread of COVID-19 than they did to get rid of it, plus the masking and everything else. The magical talisman, if you wear it, you won't get sick. So that is the speech that got him canceled. And got Carrie Underwood canceled as well. All right, let's grab one from the New York Times, a former newspaper. Let's throw some music back up here. Those anti-COVID plastic barriers probably don't help and may make things worse. From Tara Parker Pope. COVID precautions have turned many parts of the world into a giant salad bar with plastic barriers separating sales clerks from shoppers, dividing customers at nail salons, and shielding students from their classmates. Intuition tells us plastic shields would be protective against germs, but scientists who study aerosols, airflow, and ventilation say that much of the time the barriers don't help and probably give people a false sense of security, and sometimes the barriers can make things worse. Research suggests that in some instances, a barrier protecting a clerk behind a checkout may redirect the germs to another worker or customer. Rows of clear plastic shields, like those you might find in a nail salon or classroom, can also impede normal airflow and ventilation. Under normal conditions in stores, classrooms, and offices, exhaled breath particles disperse, carried by air currents, and depending on the ventilation systems, are replaced by fresh air roughly every 15 to 30 minutes. But erecting plastic barriers can change the airflow in a room, disrupt normal ventilation, and create dead zones where viral aerosol particles can build up and become highly concentrated. If you have a forest of barriers in a classroom, it's going to interfere with proper ventilation of that room, said Lindsay Marr, professor of civil and environmental engineering at Virginia Tech, and one of the world's leading experts on viral transmission. Everyone's aerosols are going to be trapped and stuck there and building up, and they will end up spreading beyond our own desk. There are some situations in which the clear shields might be protective, but it depends on the number of variables. The barriers can stop big droplets ejected during coughs and sneezes from splattering on others, which is why buffets and salad bars are often equipped with transparent sneeze guards above the food. But the pinko pox spreads largely through unseen aerosol particles. While there isn't much real-world research on the impact of transparent barriers and the risk of disease, scientists in the US and Britain have begun to study the issue, and the findings are not reassuring. There it is. All these protection measures. The plastic everywhere. The cages. The masks. They can be doing more to spread the disease than just letting it run its course. You heard it here first. Let's move on. Let's grab one here from NPR. Demand for COVID antibody drugs soars in hard-hit states. This comes to NPR via the Associated Press. But remember, we've got to read from NPR because you've got to donate to National Progressive Radio. Make sure that you get them their money, our money, comrade, and they can spread their communist ideals around the country. Let's see what the Associated Press had to say. People infected with COVID-19 were captured in a photo this week lying on the floor in pain while waiting for antibody infusions at a treatment site set up inside the library in Jacksonville, Florida. The image has become a vivid illustration of the huge demand for the once neglected COVID-19 drugs in the states hardest hit by the summer surge of infections being driven by the highly contagious Delta variant. They were mourning and obviously in a lot of pain. They were miserable, said Louis Lopez, who shot the photograph as he waited for more than 2 hours to receive the treatment. Antibody treatments remain one of a handful of therapies that can blunt the worst effects of COVID-19, and they are the only option available to people with mild to moderate cases who aren't yet in the hospital. They have risen in demand in states seeing a spike in infections, including Florida, Louisiana, and Texas, where hospitalizations among the unvaccinated are overwhelming the healthcare system. Somehow I doubt that. I'm sorry. White House officials recently reported that federal shipments of the drugs increased fivefold last month to nearly 110,000 doses, with the vast majority going to states with low vaccination rates. They are safe, they are free, they keep people out of the hospital, and will help keep them alive, said Dr. Marcela Nunez-Smith, a senior advisor to the White House's COVID-19 response team. The main drug in use is Regeneron's dual antibody cocktail, which has been purchased in mass quantities by the U.S. government. It's the same drug former President Trump received when he was hospitalized last October. The drugs are lab-made versions of virus-blocking antibodies that help fight off infections. The treatments help the patients by supplying concentrated doses of 1 or 2 antibodies. The drugs are only recommended for people at the highest risk of progressing to severe COVID-19, but regulators have slowly broadened who can qualify. The list of conditions now includes older age, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, pregnancy, and more than dozen other issues. With expanded eligibility and skyrocketing caseloads across the country, more people are getting the treatments. Greg Abbott, who this week tested positive for the virus, is himself receiving the treatments, and said 5 state-run COVID-19 antibody infusion centers opened last week, and another 4 would open by Monday. At least 140 providers across Texas are offering the antibodies treatment, his office said. So, if we've got this miracle drug, which is also probably not FDA approved yet because it has to go through long trials, but if we've got this drug out here, then why do we need the big push for vaccines anymore that don't seem to work anyway, by the way? Except that they work perfectly, and everybody should run out and get their vaccine. Don't ban me Susan, bro. Honk honk. But that's what we're seeing coming back up out of that. Got a pair from NBC, one from C and one from regular NBC. Scientists blast U.S. push for COVID vaccine booster shots as premature, say data isn't compelling. From Berkeley Loveless Jr. Scientists have sharply criticized the Biden admin push to widely distribute COVID-19 vaccine booster shots in the U.S. next month, saying the data provided by federal health officials this week isn't compelling enough to recommend third shots to most American population right now. Yeah, but it made a great distraction against what was happening in Afghanistan. U.S. health leaders say they're preparing to offer booster shots to all eligible Americans beginning the week of September 20th. The plan, outlined Wednesday by CDC Director Rochelle Walensky, Acting FDA Commissioner Dr. Janet Woodcock, White House Chief Medical Advisor Dr. Anthony Fauci, the patron saint of medicine, and hallowed be his name, and other health officials call for a third dose 8 months after people get their second shot of either Pfizer or Moderna vaccines. As the Pfizer Corp and Moderna Corp come out with dollar signs in their eyes. They cited 3 new studies released by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that showed their protection against the COVID diminished over several months. One study in New York from May 3rd to July 25th showed that vaccine protection against infection dropped from about 92% to 80%. Another study by Mayo Clinic showed that Pfizer's vaccine efficacy fell from around 76% to 42%, while Moderna's declined from 86% to 76%. Yes, let's get more government dollars into big pharma companies, and you don't have to pay it directly. I mean, the government doesn't get any money that it doesn't get from you. They don't have anything that wasn't once yours. Keep that in mind. But hey, we've got a massive government contract to the big pharma companies that up until 2 years ago, everybody, especially on the progressive left, fucking hated. But nothing to see over here, just get your booster shot. But I love the fact that scientists are coming out here and say, no, you were too quick for this one. We have no evidence that a booster shot is needed and can do anything. Stop talking. Alright, from regular NBC, University of Virginia disenrolls more than 200 students who didn't meet the vaccine mandate. Gotta stop the Instagram video because the phone's dying. Because I didn't charge it last night. This is from Nicole Acevedo. The University of Virginia has disenrolled students who didn't comply with the school's COVID-19 vaccine requirements as the institution gets ready to welcome back undergrad students for in-person classes on Monday, the school said on Saturday. At least 238 students, including 49 students who were enrolled in fall courses, were disenrolled this week after receiving multiple reminders via email, text, phone calls, calls to parents that they were out of compliance, emails to parents, text to parents, people with large suits and guns on their hips showing up at the parents' doors, that they were out of compliance. University spokesman Brian Coy told the Virginia Pilot on Friday. That means that a good number of the remaining students may not have been planning to return to the university this fall at all, Coy said. Good. Good at this point. Honestly, if that's what they want to do, what did I say when we talked about the University of Indiana? Yes, the University of Virginia is a state school. It gets large amounts of state funding to keep itself open. no matter what happens in the economy, no matter what happens to students, no matter what happens anywhere, it gets large amounts of state money to keep itself open. But they still can't stay open unless they have asses in seats. If you take away their asses in seats, they're going to be fucked in a hurry. They will be fucked if all their students walk out. I bet you even if 15% of their enrollment drops, if they lose 15% of their students, they will be fucked and they won't be able to do anything afterwards. They'll have to think about downsizing. They might have to sell a building. So good. Good if they're not going to go back. If that's how the University of Virginia wants to treat their people and disenroll them because they didn't go out and get their magical talisman in their arms, then that's on the University of Virginia, and fine. Good riddance, I say. All right, from Fox. Schwarzenegger loses corporate sponsor of bodybuilding event for dangerous anti-American comment. Good, because nobody wants to be associated with this bullshit. From Melissa Roberto. Schwarzenegger's rants about the importance of wearing face masks has landed him in hot water. Fox News can confirm the former governor of California has lost his sponsor for his annual bodybuilding event known as the Arnold Classic due to controversial comments he made last week. The former California governor riled up citizens when he called mask-averse Americans schmucks and said, "Screw your freedom," to those seeking to terminate COVID-19 mandates. In a statement to Fox News on Friday, Redcon One, a sports nutrition brand, confirmed they pulled out from Schwarzenegger's event, as well as any others he's involved with. To be clear, we did not pull out of the event because of the mask issue. We understand the importance of public safety, as well as the responsibilities of the event organizers. These are unprecedented times, and we're aligned with public safety for all. We elected to discontinue support of Arnold's comment, "Screw your freedoms," a spokesperson for the company said. Good. Good. Let these people know that they can't do stupid shit like this and get away with it. Take their sponsorships away. If they act in a manner that does not comply with your values, don't sponsor them. And from the sounds of it, Redcon One is very, 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 very focused on freedom. So, let them do their thing. All right. This one is terrifying, but it's what we're seeing from the opposite side of the world. I want to do this one first, though. Since we have, I know, at least one Orlando resident in the chat here. From the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness, Orlando urges residents to conserve water because of surge in COVID hospitalizations. From Derek Hawkins. Orlando officials called on residents Friday to stop watering their lawns and washing their cars for the next 2 weeks so that supplies of liquid oxygen used in water treatment can be preserved for hospitals grappling with a surge of coronavirus patients. The region has faced shortages of liquid oxygen as people critically ill with the pinko pox stream into hospitals in need of respiratory therapy. The demand has become so high that the city's water regulator warned that water quality could falter if consumers do not cut back. If we are unable to reduce water demand, hospital needs continue and supply remains limited. Water quality may be impacted, Linda Ferrone, chief customer and marketing official at the Orlando Utilities Commission, said in a statement, but we believe that will not happen if everyone does their part to conserve water. The city's announcement highlights the far-reaching consequences of the spike in hospitalizations being driven by the fast-moving Delta variant, which is sickening tens of thousands of people daily in Florida alone. It presents a stark warning to other communities around the country where infections have strained healthcare systems and caused shortages of medical supplies not seen since the worst waves of the pandemic. So there you go. Conserve your water, guys, because they might not be able to make liquid oxygen. All right, let's talk about Australia. Australian rescue dog shot dead over COVID-19 restrictions. Yes, you read that right. Yes, you heard that right. And the reasoning behind this will astonish you. It astonished me. From Patrick Riley. Several dogs who were slated to be rescued were shot dead in rural Australia due to local council's interpretation of the country's COVID-19 lockdown restrictions. The Berkshire Council in the northwest region of New South Wales executed the impounded pups to prevent volunteers at an animal shelter from traveling to pick up and rescue the animals last week and potentially spread the virus, government watchdog agency Office of Local Government told the Sydney Morning Herald. OLG has been informed that the City Council decided to take this course of action to protect its employees and community, including vulnerable Aboriginal populations, from the risk of COVID-19 transmission, a spokesman from the government agency told the paper. The spokesman additionally said officials were investigating whether any animal cruelty rules were broken. Sources told the Herald that shelter volunteers already had COVID-safe measures in place to handle the dogs, one of which was a new mother, making the killings completely unnecessary. The Herald said it has not received any response to its inquiries with the Berkshire Council. Administration of the shelter that was supposed to receive the dogs declined to comment. We literally have a news story where a government is shooting puppies over COVID-19. And nobody in the mainstream media has blinked a fucking eye. You remember that? You know, there was always the old joke of, oh, politician A, you can't vote for politician A because he kicks puppies, he hates puppies, he shoots puppies. Motherfucker, Australia is literally shooting puppies to protect against COVID-19. Literally. This is not a figurative statement anymore. This is actually happening in Australia. And you think this is about protecting the people anymore? This is about control. Speaking of which, from ABC News, out of Australia, dozens arrested, hundreds fined as police disrupt Sydney anti-lockdown protests, from Josh Babas and Kevin Wynn. Police made dozens of arrests and issued more than 250 fines to people breaching the state's COVID-19 public health orders on Saturday after a crackdown on anti-lockdown protesters in central Sydney. The demonstration, scheduled to start at Victoria Park on Broadway at midday, was thwarted before it began after more than 1,500 police officers made their presence felt across the city throughout the morning. Police said they had issued 261 fines, made 47 arrests for COVID-19 breaches around NSW on Saturday, most of which were connected with the protest. Officers positioned on foot, horseback, bicycles, and motorcycles were out on the streets at a major road and railway station. A ring was also created around the CBD, but not the cool oil. Police Minister David Elliott said there had been a community backlash after thousands of people attended a similar protest last month, and he was disappointed that some had not heeded the message. That small minority has again chosen to blatantly ignore the clear, repeated warnings of NSW police, which is disappointing, frustrating, and frankly disgraceful. The actions they have taken are likely to prolong the very lockdown they were protesting about. You be good, or otherwise we'll put you in a box and take away your freedom. Let's watch some of the video of this, because it's horrifying. You think this isn't coming here? Was it about the virus? Was it about protecting the population? Or was it about control? You decide. All right, let's talk about the Donald, because he had a rally over the weekend here. From CNBC, starting out with the bad news, Trump booed at Alabama rally after telling supporters to get vaccinated. From Alan Smith. Former President Trump was booed at a rally on Saturday in Alabama after telling supporters they should get vaccinated. And you know what? I believe totally in your freedoms. I do. I've got to do what you've got to do, Trump said. But I recommend take the vaccine. I did it. It's good. Take the vaccine. Some boos rang out from the rally crowd, who were largely maskless. No, that's okay. That's all right. You got your freedoms, Trump said, echoing rhetoric from the opponents of mask and vaccine mandates. But I happen to take the vaccine. If it doesn't work, you'll be the first to know, okay? I'll call up Alabama. I'll say, hey, you know what? But the vaccine is working. But you do have your freedoms. You have to maintain that. Large swaths of the South are experiencing a surge in COVID cases and hospitalizations because of the highly contagious Delta variant of the coronavirus. Cullman, where the rally was hosted, is experiencing a rise in cases that has matched previously peak from late December. The city declared a COVID state of emergency on Thursday to provide extra emergency support for the rally. Alabama has the lowest vaccinated rate in the U.S., with just more than 36% of its population fully inoculated, according to NBC News Tracker. Alabama Governor Kay Ivey, a Republican, has said the unvaccinated folks are to blame for the COVID's resurgence in the state. Well, and that's the other thing too. And what have I always said? What have I always said on this channel? It is your personal assessment. It's your freedom, your personal assessment. And this was a right to try kind of thing. People went into this knowing that it was not FDA approved. And a lot of them went in going into it because the government told them to do so. That's a separate discussion. But I've always said, if you want to get the vaccine, get the vaccine. I might rib you a little bit and poke fun at you and say, hey, how's your cell reception at this point? But if you want to get it, I'm not going to have a problem with it. That is your body and your choice to do so. Now, I might even take you to your appointment to go and get it. I'm not going to go in there myself because I'm not getting the damn thing. But if you want it and you have no other way to do it, I'll take you there. I'll do it yourself. It is your body, your choice. You make the decision on what goes into your body and what doesn't. It's bodily autonomy, 101. The government shouldn't compel you. Your peers shouldn't compel you. Nobody should compel you to do this. It is your body. Make your own decision on what's best for you. Always. Another one from the New York Post. Trump slams Biden for Afghanistan withdrawal during Alabama rally appearance. From Patrick Riley. Former President Trump slammed U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan as the greatest foreign policy humiliation in the history of the U.S. during a rally in Alabama on Saturday. Trump ripped President Biden for allowing weakness in the White House, saying that Vietnam looks like a masterclass in strategy compared to the Biden catastrophe. This will go down as one of the great military defeats of all time, and it did not have to happen this way, Trump said to his supporters. This was not a withdrawal. This was a total surrender for no reason. He surrendered our airbase. He surrendered our weapons. He surrendered our embassy, Trump said. The ex-president addressed a crowd of thousands in deep red Cullman, Alabama, at the rally in support of Rep. Mo Brooks, who was running for the Senate seat. He criticized the billions of dollars worth of arms and equipment that were left behind and seized by the Taliban, including possibly 600,000 assault rifles, some 2,000 armored vehicles, and 40 aircraft, including Black Hawks, according to reports. It didn't have to happen. All Biden had to do was leave the soldiers until everyone was out. Our citizens, the weapons, and then you bomb the hell out of the bases and you say, bye-bye, Trump said. He said after 20 years of conflict, his administration determined it was time for U.S. troops to leave Afghanistan, but to depart in dignity. Very soon, we're going to have September 11th, and we're going to have, because of Biden, the Taliban flag flying over the embassy. Trump defended his original negotiations with Taliban leadership during his presidency, in which he said he orchestrated a conditions-based agreement for the U.S. withdrawal with the extremist group, who he described as great negotiators and tough fighters. The former president said he made it clear when he met with Taliban leader Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar that Americans and U.S. government would be protected upon military withdrawal. With me in office, me, your greatest president, The best, okay? Better than Sleepy Joe. The Taliban would not have ever dreamt of capturing our airfield or parading around with American weapons, he said. Well, I guess we don't have a time machine, and we can't tell if that's actually what would have happened. I actually tend to believe that, though. I think that's possibly what could have happened with this. But I mean, looking back at this, the big thing of this, and this is not something the mainstream media is prepared to do, and I didn't really want to take from like the Blaze or the Daily Wire on this, but I mean, this was a massive 1,000-man arena-packing rally again. And the most popular president in history, Joe Biden, Hong Kong, nothing bad happened. Most popular, most votes ever in history, can barely get 300 people watching his official White House press. Now, I will play devil's advocate against that because that's, a lot of commentators who are very, very pro-Trump will point out the fact that, oh, well, Joe Biden can only get us 300 people watching his White House live stream events. But like the Washington Post, where democracy goes to die in darkness, and the New York Times, a former newspaper, and MSDNC will usually all also run President Biden's speeches with, 3,000, 5,000, 10,000 people watching each. So it's not like the views aren't getting them. They're just not going to the official White House channel. They're going to third-party ones. But that's what we're seeing coming back up out of that. From Bloomberg, that is Ron Helton's favorite website from his favorite politician. Democrats dare on debt, sets up high-stakes shutdown fight. We almost forgot about the budget thing. And this is from August 16th. This is a week old at this point, but because of everything else that's been happening with Afghanistan, we haven't been able to talk about the infrastructure bill, which we talked about on Saturday with the great group of people who joined me for that. But this is from Stephen T. Dennis over at Bloomberg. Democrats are betting Republicans will blink and agree to raise the debt ceiling before it expires, a risky wager after a weeks-long standoff that threatens the health of the financial markets and continued U.S. government operations. Should market turmoil and federal shutdowns ensue this fall, it could overshadow Democrats' efforts to push through President Biden's $40.1 trillion economic agenda and serve a blow to the party heading into the next year's midterm election. Democrats last week passed up the chance to muscle a debt ceiling hike through the Senate on a party line vote, opting instead to go through the normal legislative process, perhaps attached to a stopgap government funding bill that will require the acquiescence of 10 Republican senators. No, fuck you. Stand hold. If they want to have the debt ceiling raised, which they have the ability to do, then they've got to give up their budget reconciliation bill. Because McConnell says he doesn't want to raise, which is very surprising for McConnell because he loves to spend money just as much as a fucking Democrat does. He loves omnibus packages just as much as Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer do. But he wants to play hardball for partisan politic reasons. And I don't want to see the debt ceiling get raised. Fuck your spending of money. Stop spending your fucking money. But if they really need to have the debt ceiling raised, either try to cram it into your human infrastructure package that you're going to try to pass on budget reconciliation and hopefully lose on cinema, or go pass it and blow your fucking wad on that. We're going to default on our debt unless we get 10 Republicans on board. Fuck you. Fuck you. Then default on it. Stop spending the money. Oh, but we need the debt ceiling raised so we can so that we can honor our commitments. And I said this was it last week or the week before? I don't remember. It's been so long since we've talked about the infrastructure bill. The problem with this and the debt ceiling being raised and all the crap that they're talking about with that is if you need to borrow money, like say you're in a household here. What do you got? You've got your rent. You've got your cable bill. You've got your electric bill. And I've been in this situation before. When I lived in Kenosha, I was not doing well at all. I thankfully got out of there and was able to turn my life around. But when I lived in Kenosha, I was not doing well at all. By any stretch of the imagination. But if you were in the situation where you need to borrow money to pay your rent, if you need to put your electric bill on a credit card more than once a year, like I understand emergencies happen and that's why most people justify having a credit card is because emergencies happen. Just so I can have it there for an emergency. That's not how most people use it, but that's how they justify getting it. But if you're putting your electric bill or your cable bill on the credit card, you can't afford it more than once a year. You can't afford that shit, and you shouldn't be out living on your own. And it's the same thing with the government. If you can't afford to pay your Social Security, your Medicare, your Medicaid, the things that your obligations, your interest on the debt, then don't borrow money to pay that. It's like when you use your MasterCard to pay your Visa card, and then use your Visa card to go pay off your American Express. And you look down at all your credit cards that you're using to juggle and pay off each other, and you call it 7 card screwed. So that's coming up here, and yeah, own that. If that's what's going to happen, then fucking own it. If you need to borrow money to pay your bills, then you need to do it without having the people who are trying to stop the spending. Mostly because they're not in control and they're doing it as a handout to their constituents, not necessarily because they don't want to spend the money. Alright, let's talk a little bit about the Northeast here. Mr. Fanning, if you are still in here, if you want to throw some insights in the chat on this, because I know that you're in New York. Slow-moving Henry to bring more heavy rain into eastern Mass on Monday. So this actually has largely gone uncovered. Was this massive hurricane, and I have to wonder if this is going to be another Katrina for President Biden.
So now it's a 30-mile-per-hour...
Oh, shut up, you. Tropical Depression Henry continued to weaken early Monday morning, but was expected to continue to bring heavy rains into interior Massachusetts, western New England, and New York nearly 24 hours after the storm made landfall in westerly Rhode Island on Sunday. As of 11 p.m. Sunday, the National Hurricane Center said the system had weakened to a tropical depression with a maximum sustained wind of 30 miles an hour with higher gusts. A slow turn around the north is expected Monday morning, followed by a motion towards the east-northeast on Monday. Henry is expected to degenerate into a post-tropical remnant low by Monday afternoon, which means I have to go text a friend as soon as we're off here just to make sure that she's okay. Henry's expected, the National Hurricane Center said, adding that it would end its briefings on the system. While no longer a coastal or wind threat, Henry's greatest impact continues to be torrential rain and potential threat for tornado over parts of Massachusetts, Connecticut, and New York. Which is interesting coming out of Massachusetts because I was told when I lived out there, and really honestly, I experienced this because, we had massive storms come over while I was living out there, but they all broke up over the Appalachian Mountains, that tornadoes don't really hit eastern Mass because the pressure system in the Appalachian Mountains takes them out. So to have something coming back in off the ocean that could spawn them out, a lot of people aren't going to be prepared for that kind of stuff, unfortunately. But, yeah, looks like it's going to go in. Looks like it jumped up. Did it make landfall in Rhode Island? Because it looks like it went up through western New York, and now it's going to kick back that way. I don't know. This hasn't been really followed so much, so I hope that everyone in Boston is okay. All my friends out there. I'll be checking in with them as soon as I'm off air here, so we will see what happens.
And this...
Shut up, you. Alright, let's grab another one from NPR. We're almost done here, you guys. I hope we don't hit the 3-hour mark, because I'd really like to get everyone over to Stephen Ignoramus' show, but, yeah, let's go check in with our friends over at NPR here. A federal judge has thrown out approval for a major oil project in Alaska. This also comes to NPR by the Associated Press, but remember, we have to click on their links so we can get them their money, because your taxpayer money isn't enough for them to spread their communist ideals. Remember, NPR, National Progressive Radio. It's not your money, comrade, it's our money. Let's see what the Associated Press has to say. A federal judge on Wednesday threw out Trump's administration approvals for a large planned oil project on Alaska's North Slope, saying the federal review was flawed and didn't include mitigation measures for polar bears. U.S. District Court Judge Sharon Gleason in Anchorage vacated permits for a ConocoPhillips Willow project in the National Petroleum Reserve, Alaska, in a 110-page ruling. The Trump admin approved the project in late 2020, and the Biden admin defended the project in court, which is surprising because they shut down all other oil drilling projects. Rebecca Boyes, a ConocoPhillips spokesperson, said the company would review Gleason's decision and evaluate the options available regarding this project. Gas is going up. Spokespersons for the U.S. Bureau of Land Management and the Interior Department said the agencies had no comment. The Bureau of Land Management conducted the environmental review of the project that Gleason found flawed. Conservation groups and Sovereign Inupiat for a Living Arctic, described as grassroots organization, had challenged the adequacy of the review process. Carlin Ichoak, an Alaska director for the Wilderness Society, in a statement called the ruling a step towards protecting public lands and the people who would be most negatively impacted by the BLM's haphazard greenlighting of the Willow Project. So I have some questions about this, and I'll probably look into this a little bit more here, but it sounds to me like this was an environmental group went out and went judge shopping for somebody who would definitely shut this project down. Rather than there actually being a problem, they just went out and looked for somebody who says, "We can't let this go on any longer. Please don't make me vote for Joe Biden." It sounds like they went out and did that, and then they shopped for a judge who would shut this down, and then the federal judge shut it down without any sort of adequate necessity to do so. Now, if there's actual evidence that somebody greased up some palms and said, "Hey, just approve this here, and we'll make you rich beyond your wildest dreams," then so be it. But this sounds a lot more like an activist group that just looked for a reason to go shut down another pipeline. From WISH-TV, we already read about Henry here. It doesn't look like it's as severe, so I'm actually going to skip this one. From Reuters, court rules California gig economy initiative is unconstitutional. From Kanishka Singh. What do we have left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 left after this. And then the rules of acquisition. But we got to finish this up here because my friend Steven is sitting here without some of his regular audience members, and we can't have that. Because my friend Steven is a good man, and he deserves the audience members that he gets. A 2020 ballot measure that exempted rideshare and food delivery drivers from a state labor law is unconstitutional. A California judge ruled on Friday, as it infringes on the legislature's power to set workplace standards. That's why it's a problem for them. Because remember, when we talked about finance at the top of the show, I couldn't figure out why this was a problem. That's why, because they put a carve-out for this. That's why this is going to hit them. A ballot measure aimed to cement app-based food delivery and ride-hail drivers' status as independent contractors, not employees. Gig economy companies such as Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash and Instacart were pushing to keep drivers' independence contractor status, albeit with additional benefits. However, in a ruling, Alameda County Superior Court Judge Frank Reich wrote that the measure, known as Prop 22, was unconstitutional. It limits the power of a future legislature to define app-based drivers as workers subject to workers' compensation law, making the entire measure unenforceable, the judge wrote. So there it is. You have to be an employee if you're going to work in California. Independent contractors, you are no more in California. My God, I'm glad Britt got out of there, especially with the new project that we're coming up off of this. You have to be an employee because you have to offer benefits. I am not going to offer benefits to an employee that I have in California. No matter what their law is, they can deal with it on their own. You have to be an employee. You can't do anything else in California. And I can see where it violates, because it also violates equal protection under the law. But these people have chosen this path for themselves. They don't want to be employees. They just want to ride around in their car and take people to places in sunny California all day or drive food around. They don't want to be in the regular 9-to-5 grind. They chose this path because they didn't want to have to deal with going on and being a regular employee. But now California is saying that they have to. So this is going to hurt. I didn't realize they had a carve-out for this. I missed that somehow last year. I remember Prop 22 going in and people saying that the rideshare industry was over, the owner-operator trucker was over, all these independent contractors in California, that they were all over because of the way that Prop 22 went. But somehow I missed the fact that they put a carve-out in for this. So, that's what California is doing. From The Guardian, speaking of independent contractors, we have an explanation as to why they decided to do this, and I think it's a bunch of shit. But I do want you guys to hear what they're saying. I want you guys to hear how they're defending it. OnlyFans ban on sexually explicit content will endanger lives, says U.S. sex workers. I'm sorry, I misread the headline then. So this is not OnlyFans coming out saying that we're trying to protect endangered lives. This is sex workers coming out saying, this is going to endanger our lives. American sex workers say subscription website OnlyFans' decision to ban sexually explicit content will threaten their livelihoods, drive more of the industry underground, and ultimately endanger lives. They're taking away our safe spaces, said Jane, an activist and OnlyFans creator who was asked to be identified only by her first name. Nobody wants to protect us. OnlyFans, a subscriber-only website that hosts a range of producers but is most well-known for adult content, has exploded in popularity over the past year as sex work, like many professions, moved online amid the pandemic. Activists say the banning of pornographic content will push more people into danger. This change will put workers on the streets who would otherwise afford rent. It will starve the children of sex workers who could otherwise afford to feed them. It will force workers currently working remotely online into riskier street-based sex work, said Mary Moody, an online sex worker and co-chair of the Adult Industry Laborers and Artists Association. OnlyFans has been preferred by online sex workers because of its low fees compared with many adult camera and other content sites, allowing them to take home 80% of their earnings. Many say it has given them financial freedom that they have not found in other industries. The decision will be disastrous for sex workers who use the platform to make their own earnings and gain more control of the work process, said Heather Berg, assistant professor of women, gender, and sexuality studies at Washington University in St. Louis. Well, learn to code, I guess. For people who made a living off studio porn previously, the move to OnlyFans has meant significantly more control over safety, partner choice, and representation, particularly important for performers of color and trans people, she said. This decision will move control and profit back into producers' hands, which is, I'm guessing, why this happened in the first place. Big Porn looked in and said, we're losing our asses to people in their bedrooms with a webcam. What do? Oh, let's lean on our friends in the banking industry who are running payment processors for OnlyFans. That'll work, and it is working. Payment companies are increasingly cracking down on adult content, forcing online platforms that use banking services to comply with more stringent rules. In 2020, following a report from the New York Times, a former newspaper alleging revenge porn was posted on the prominent site Pornhub, MasterCard and Visa temporarily banned payments to Pornhub's host company, MindGeek. Tens of millions of consensual but unverified videos were removed in response, cutting off income for thousands of sex workers. Yeah, but you know what? Those unfilled jobs are about to get filled. Those unfilled jobs are about to get filled. Alright, this one came to me from the Discord. Thank you to Hiley for putting this one in here. Let's talk a little bit about BlackRock. And let's finish out with these last couple ones here, because they should be quick hitters. Do a rule of acquisition and head out of here for the day. BlackRock ETFs hold more than $384 million of shares in Bitcoin mining firms. Because of course they do. Filings submitted by the $9 trillion multinational investment manager BlackRock revealed that the firm has made significant investments in the two leading publicly traded Bitcoin mining firms. A June 30th filing submitted to the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, unearthed by Forbes, shows that BlackRock owns a 6.71% stake in Marathon Digital Holdings and 6.61% of Riot Blockchain. In total, the investments are valued at nearly $384 million, with BlackRock having purchased nearly $207 million worth of Marathon and $176 million worth of Riot stock. According to ETF.com, BlackRock's iShares Russell 2000 ETF holds more shares in Marathon and Riot than any other exchange-traded fund, while iShares Russell 2000 Value ETF ranks third in the same measure. The investments are not BlackRock's first in the digital asset sector, with the firm filing an application with the SEC in January for 2/3 of its funds to purchase cash-settled Bitcoin futures contracts before revealing in April that its BlackRock Global Allocation Fund has brought 37 BTC futures contracts from the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Insider trading. And BlackRock can get away with it. Just like they can get away with doing the thing where they run out and buy all the property up for people off of here. This is all taxpayer-backed, government-funded takeover of the economic industry. And these guys are getting taxpayer funds to do this. All right, from CBS. Chicago group asks Supreme Court to halt work on Obama Presidential Library. From Melissa Quinn. An organization focused on protecting public parks in Chicago is asking the Supreme Court to halt construction of a former president, Barack Obama's presidential library, arguing the federal government failed to conduct the legally required reviews of the center's environmental impact. In their request filed with Justice Amy Coney Barrett, the group Protect Our Parks said that in building the Obama Presidential Center, the government will need to demolish significant parts of Jackson Park, which will have adverse effects on the environment, landscape, wildlife, and migratory birds. The OPC project will promptly dismantle much of Jackson Park's historical landscape and obliterate trees, wildlife, as well as all of its historic transportation system, the organization and several Chicago residents involved in the dispute told the Supreme Court. These facts make the situation cry out for proper application of federal laws, and all parties indisputably agree are at issue with the case. They're asking the High Court to preclude further work on the center, which was scheduled to begin on August 16th. That is funnier than shit. I'm going to tell you why. The climate change lobby has shut down the Obama Presidential Library. That is hilarious. I'm surprised that they waited 4 years to actually get this started, too. I thought for sure that they were going to start this in the midst of him still being president, you know. Especially given what Barack Obama is here. You know, I've got to have a monument to myself, and my monument is it's going to be my presidential library. That's going to be my monument to myself, and there'll be a golden statue of me out there. Me, who I saved the economy. But everything that you saw under Trump there until the coronavirus hit, that was all me. It was me. It was mine. Everything was mine. Okay, that's it. It was all me. And everything that bad that happened under my administration, it was all Bush's fault. Progressives have stopped the building of the Obama Presidential Library. Might be the funniest headline of the day. From Insider, Kenosha prosecutors are demanding that the names of everyone who has donated to Kyle Rittenhouse to bar them from serving on a jury. If I wasn't so far behind on my show notes for the Red Net Show, I debated going to Kenosha today. Going into the prosecutor's office, because I know where it is, putting my fist on the table and saying, I donated to him. What are you going to fucking do about it? Actually, I haven't either. But still, just to say, what are you going to do about it? Live stream it too, so you guys can see what happens. Persecutors have demanded that a judge force Kyle Rittenhouse's defense team to turn over the names of everyone who donated to his legal funds or purchased the teen's merchandise. In an August 17th court filing reviewed by Insider, persecutors said it's likely that some of the people who donated to Rittenhouse are residents in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and therefore potentially part of the jury pool for his trial. The 18-year-old is set to stand trial in November on charges of killing protesters Anthony Huber and Joseph Rosenbaum, as well as severely injuring Gage Grosskreutz last summer at a racial justice demonstration. Rittenhouse, who has said he shot the men in self-defense as they chased him, quickly became a right-wing cause célèbre. He drew in enough donations to cover his $2 million bail. His family has been selling Free Kyle t-shirts, beanies, and other swag through their website, freekyleusa.com. Anyone who has donated money to the defendant's legal defense funds or purchased products from his family's website, freekyleusa.com, is objectively biased and should be stricken for cause from serving on the jury. In this case, the Kenosha County Assistant District Attorney Thomas Binger wrote in the motion. That is full-on bullshit, and you know it. That is full-on fucking horse shit, and you know it. They're looking for the names of this because they want to release them out and say, hey, see this extremist out here? You don't want this person working for you, do you? Oh, hey, big billion-dollar company out there. You don't want this person working for you, do you? It has nothing to do with the jury pool. And if you did your job, prosecution, by the way, like they were supposed to do their job in Minneapolis, you could eliminate all of these people on the interviews because you're going to have interviews of every juror before the trial, and you can throw them out. There's going to be hundreds of jurors for this, and only 12 of them are going to be picked because you're going to find biases on one way or the other, and the defense is going to find biases on one way or the other. Because you publicize this out. This has nothing to do with disqualifying the jury pool. This is everything to do with trying to dox people who would dare support an ideology that isn't yours. Fuck you. I'm going to go down there. No, I can't because I got shit to do. I've got Red Net Show stuff to do, and I got to make sure you guys have a good program for that at 5:30 Central Time tonight with the wonderful John from The Generational Gap. I hope that Elaine comes back at some point soon. I do. But I really want to go down there and put my fist on the table and say, I donated to him. What the fuck are you going to do about it? Especially since I'm not eligible for that jury pool anymore because I don't live there anymore. All right. I have one more here from NPR. This is the 3 NPR day, but this is a long show. So we have the statistics to get us 3 NPR. Mike Richards resigns as host of Jeopardy from Bill Chappelle. And remember, this will be your third reminder. Donate to National Progressive Radio so they can spread their communist ideals. Let's see what Bill has to say. Mike Richards has announced he won't be hosting Jeopardy! Days after reports detailed sexist and other inappropriate comments he made in his former role as a podcast host. Fuck. I'm never going to be able to host Jeopardy! I will be stepping down as host effective immediately, Richards said in an email to staff that was provided to NPR on Friday. Richards' remarks in a podcast dating from his stint as The Price is Right put his new hosting gig in peril, coming on the heels of earlier allegations of a hostile work environment, as well as how questions about the show's quiz show executive producer was chosen for the coveted hosting role. We support Mike's decision to step down as a host, a Sony Pictures Television spokesman sent an email to NPR. We were surprised this week to learn of Mike's 2013-2014 podcast and the offensive language he used in the past. Well, fuck. I wanted to host Jeopardy at one point. Motherfuck. What the fuck am I going to do now? Other than go find a wife and put her in the kitchen. We have spoken with him about our concerns and our expectations moving forward. Richards will remain in his role not leading the show, the company spokesman added. It is our hope that as EP he will continue to do so with professionalism and respect. Yep, they go digging on everybody. Everybody who doesn't toe the woke fucking line will be sacrificed on the altar of fucking woke. 2 more, and then the rule of acquisition, and we're done. We're not going to get to that 3-hour contemporary. I know we talked about it. Protesters clash in Portland after opposing gatherings. This is from KSAT.com, no author given. Opposing rallies that drew hundreds of people in Portland sparked clashes on Sunday. The two groups had gathered in different parts of the city as a far-right group changed the location of its event. The right-wing rally drew about 100 people in a parking lot of a former Kmart store, and clashes began as it wound down, Coin TV reported. A van tried to drive into the parking lot but crashed, and the driver ran away. Brave, 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 brave Sir Robin! Demonstrators then began igniting fireworks and similar devices. It was not immediately clear whether anyone suffered serious injuries. Later, shots were fired near demonstrators downtown. Dustin Brandon Pereira, 37, a left-wing activist, told the Oregonian/Oregon Live that he was with others Sunday evening when a man used a slur against a black man in the group and then fired multiple rounds in their direction. Portland police said the man was arrested. No one was injured. Demonstrations associated with anti-fascists had earlier drawn more than 200 people downtown. The plans for the opposing demonstrations had prompted Portland police to call in all available police personnel. Portland Police Chief Chuck Lavelle said Friday that despite expecting clashes, police will not necessarily be standing between opposing groups. Lavelle and Portland Mayor Ted Wheeler did not name the groups expected to gather that may choose to confront one another. Oregon State Police, the Sheriff's Office, and other local partners were also helping to address the situation. Dude, Antifa is a plant. Or, I'm sorry, not Antifa. The Proud Boys are a fucking plant. There's no reason for them to continue to be working like this in Seattle and Portland. Other than to come out here and draw the news story away and say, hey, look at Antifa. These guys are a plant. There's no other way. Something that the mainstream media can come out and say, white supremacist, and still come back and take their paycheck from the mainstream media. I have no truth. These guys are a psyop. All right, and the last one is basically, I had to see it, so you have to see it. Schumer slammed for dancing at New York City concert amid Afghanistan strife. This isn't really important except for the fact that, you know, let them eat cake. Government officials are coming out and dancing. Maskless Colbert, by the way, too, while Afghanistan falls. But I had to see it, so you have to see it. Once again, I have no comment for this except for I had to see it, so you had to see it. Alright, that's it for the news for the day, and the last thing we do on Monday is we go over one of the rules of acquisition from the Ferengi and talk about how it applies in normal life. Now, and of course, we piss off whatever Twitch progressive is still in the chat at this point. 2 hours and 19 minutes later, thank you Twitch progressives out there who have stuck around this long. Because imagine standing for the Ferengi. The Ferengi are fucking based, yo. This is a, I don't like this rule of acquisition myself very much, but it is, well, I mean, we're going in order, so we're going to go through this one here. But this is an extension on the 16th rule of acquisition. A deal is a deal until a better one comes along. The 17th rule of acquisition. A contract is a contract is a contract, but only between Ferengi. This comes from the DS9 episode Body Parts. And what was happening in Body Parts was that, you know, we're making contracts in between several species, and this is what happened throughout the series of Deep Space Nine. The Ferengi that were featured would make contracts between various species or the Federation of Planets. They were selling weapons to one side, selling weapons to the other side, but they honored their contracts with the Ferengi. And I don't like this very much because you should always honor your commitments off of this, but you should also be wary of who is going to honor their commitments with you as they go along. You know, this is a part of the reason that we're sitting in the situation that we're in. Now, the U.S. government comes out and says we have to carry the deals that we made, our obligations to the American people. And as Darth, what was it? I don't see him in the chat anymore, but Darth Totes. As Darth Totes said earlier on, you know, imagine keeping the agreements that we made and the obligations we have to Afghanistan as well, because we didn't do that. We didn't get out when we were supposed to. A contract is a contract is a contract. This is something we apply to our life negatively, because we should honor all of our contracts. And if we don't, we see situations like Afghanistan. And you also see situations, you saw it in Deep Space Nine, where Quark or the Nagus would make a contract with somebody who was non-Ferengi and break it because something better came along, a better deal came along.
And there was retaliation from there. And we're seeing this now, too. We're seeing retaliation against our forces, against the people, and against the people of Afghanistan because we didn't keep our deal. So, the important part of this is not try to go down the Ferengi route on this one, as I usually do, trying to apply them in real life, but showing the consequences of what happens when you do follow a rule like this. Where we sit here, and now we've broken a contract with Afghanistan, stayed in, and now we're planning on staying in longer. And yes, now they're planning on doing more retaliatory strikes, more retaliation against people who were sympathetic to the Afghan government, and by default the U.S. government. And we see a mess of foreign policy coming from our current houseplant-in-chief. All right, let's get out of here. Let's get some music up here. Let's get out of here. My allergies are killing me. We got to finish up here. Let's be done. Where's my music? Where's my music? Let's go. All right, so thanks everybody who came by and chatted in the live chat and stuck with me for 2 hours and 23 minutes, the longest episode of Contemporary yet. I hope we don't do too many more of these, but the more Afghanistan stuff and the more other stuff they try to slide under the table that we need to pay attention to, the more stuff, the longer these shows are going to be. And I hope we get back down to that sweet, sweet hour mark. You remember the first Contemporary was a half an hour. But we will work on this. We will make sure that all the important news is covered, and we will check everything out. And once again, if you're not in the Discord, get in the Discord, because you can help shape the show and tell me what's important to you guys. I will be back here later on tonight with John from the Porch Boys, guest hosting for the Red and Ed show, hopefully, and crossing our fingers that Elaine comes back sometime soon, because, I mean, it's half her show too, and we do miss her, but come and join us later on tonight for that. Otherwise, we will see you here back tomorrow for more Contemporary. Until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary, and make sure you go and check out Stephen Ignoramus, who is broadcasting now over on his YouTube channel, Stephen Ignoramus, or his DLive channel, also Stephen Ignoramus. That is Stephen with a PH. Let's go over there and check that out, and we will see you next time. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Take care.